So this lecture is titled really For the Nations, but it's not only for the nations, it is for humanity. That includes Jewish people as well as non-Jewish people alike. Now it's important to understand that we are absolutely, in fact, one entity. God created mankind. He created Adam, which included Chava, to be one soul. Yes, there's a combination of many souls, but the reality of it is, again, we are all one. So let's understand like this. Number one, you don't come to somebody, you don't say, "Hey, how are you doing, David?" Actually, that's how you do say it. You say, "How are you doing, David?" You don't say, "Hey, David, how is David's face today? Hey, can I shake the arm of David or David's arm?" You don't say things like that. Why not? Because we look at the face, the arm, each individual limb as not separate entities, but as one whole person. And this is the exact same thing. That's how we have to understand it. However, the body, the person, is made up of many, many, many parts. You have, again, the 248 limbs. We have the 600 or the 365 sinews. That includes all the different organs in the body. That makes up the totality of man. So we have to keep that in mind. Now, since we're all one, and we're all one organic whole, we have to understand how each one of us operates independently, thus individually, but collectively working together, forming one complete whole person or one whole soul. So, let's understand this. We are taught in the Bible, and again, I'm reading, and this is based on the teachings of the Ramchal in his Sefer Derech Hashem. It's Rabbi Chaim Luzatto. So it says, we are taught in the Bible that all of humanity is created in the image of God. Therefore, each and every person is thus able to have a connection and relationship to our Creator. This was, is, and will continue to be the main purpose of creation. The greatest good that there is God Himself. God thus made and designed creation in order to give the absolute good to humanity, this being the experience and connection to God Himself. Know, therefore, that here is a rule and a major principle that in the spiritual world, what defines closeness of one being to another, this is based on similarity. It is not based on the rules that govern this world in regard to the concept of physical proximity or closeness, for this concept of physicality does not apply to the spiritual worlds. Now let's give an example. In this physical world, it is possible to put an absolute righteous person back to back with a serial killer. Now, though both are worlds apart in moral character and could never share the same views and opinions, it is still thus possible to put them right next to each other back to back. And why is this again? Because in this physical world, there's a concept of physicality, of space, and therefore you can do such a thing. Now, though, in the spiritual worlds, where the concept of physicality does not apply, these two beings could never be nowhere close to each other. This is an impossibility. Therefore, it is only in order for man to become as close to God as possible that he has to be as similar to God as possible. The only possible way that this could be achieved is if man has free will, just like his Creator, just like God. But there is a hitch. Just like God has free will and knows the difference between good and evil, on another lecture we'll define more of what evil is. And again, don't forget, God did create both of these concepts as well as everything else. And God nonetheless only chooses good, so too must man, humanity. Each one of us. Man must also possess, therefore, free will, knowing the difference between good and evil, and choose only good. This is what gives man the ability then to be similar to God. and thus be able to draw close to him and experience his greatness and bask in his absolute goodness. Understanding this well, we can now move on to the Garden of Eden, or Gan Eden, where God placed man first, and of course woman, Eve, again being Adam and Chava, or Adam and Eve, being one whole entity, one soul, which comprises Adam. Adam and Chava, or Adam and Eve, were originally created possessing the highest of spiritual levels and eternal life. If they would not have sinned, they would have achieved even a greater spiritual level. But the problem is that they would have not earned these higher levels on their own, and would not have been able to have taken, therefore, any credit in their own achievements in spiritual development. Man was meant, therefore, and this is a key thing to understand, man was meant to eat from the Eitz Hada'at, the tree of knowledge. Though this might seem contrary and contradictory to what have people been taught and our understanding of things, that this was so. And there's actually a allusion to this, a hint to this in the Tehillim itself by the word Alilotov, that Adam says that you tricked me. You tricked me in this case, and you wanted me to eat. You caused me to eat, and therefore I actually did eat. Now this was the only way man could be in a position how he could shape then his own destiny. God predefined the beginning and also the end goal or purpose. God gave man the choice how he will arrive at that end point and therefore fulfill God's purpose and creation, being thus a partner with him. One humanity makes the right choices by choosing good, then our path is easy with much peace, love, and reward. When humanity makes the wrong choices and chooses evil, then the path, as we understand and have witnessed and experienced, it's hard, it's complete with struggles, with suffering, with unfulfillment, and of course with death. The choices are ours. In regard to humanity, the offspring of Adam and Eve from God's original conception, they were ordained to have had many, many descendants as God saw fit, where each one would have a personal connection to God, delighting in his glory and his benevolence. The descendants of Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, were to be comprised of different levels, and that some would be what's called primary souls and others would be secondary souls. This can be compared to the structure of a tree. It's composed of roots, the trunk, branches, and leaves. Now, Adam and Chava, though, descended after they ate, far downward, after they ate from the tree of knowledge, and they could not control their desires and temptations. This then led to the sin and spiritual concept of impurity. This not only affected themselves, but guess what? It affected all their future descendants, including ourselves. Thus, humanity spiraled downward, descending spiritually lower and lower, far from that exalted and immortal level originally destined for us all. Now understand, this does not mean that we are incapable of ascending higher than the level that we have sunk, or to even getting to a higher level and ascending to a higher, much higher level, because that is where we hopefully will achieve. Now, Adam and Eve, they were denied the chance, though, for themselves to return to that original level, even though they were the original cause of the descent of humanity. Humanity has been granted the freedom of choice and the freedom to choose to ascend to a very great level. It is very important to know that there is a time limit with how God created at the end of his purpose to achieve this goal. And therefore, God has decreed that this world as we know it is destined to exist for a maximum of 6,000 years. Keep in mind, we are now currently in the year 5777. Recalling that there has been decreed that there was destined to be root, souls, trunk, branch, and offshoots of souls, the root souls were to have regained Adam and Eve's original high spiritual stature and level. Their offshoots were to follow then in their wake, and all of humanity was to have remained on the exalted plane consisting of very high spiritual levels. Now, according to God's time clock, even after the fall of humanity, of man, there were 2 time periods for each person who collectively forms all of humanity, to which the gates of opportunity and spiritual rectification were open for everyone to become a root soul or part of this level. Had a person during these time periods achieved this, they would have been worthy of being on the level or very close to the level of Adam and Eve before they ate from the forbidden fruit. Not only that, but they would have also rectified and refined some aspect of their seed, of their children, of their descendants, level 2. This opportunity was available from the time of Adam and Eve themselves that lasted until the time of the destruction of the Tower of Babel after the flood of Noah. During this time period, there were indeed people who strove for personal spiritual perfection. These great people included Hanoch, or as the English is Enoch, but the proper pronunciation is Hanoch. Also Methuselah, Shem, and Ever. They and others of their caliber could have become root souls in their own right, and thus could have served as the bearers of God's message for mankind. But none of them actually achieved this completely. Avraham, or in the English Abraham, who actually achieved this, the father of the Jewish nation. He succeeded to attach himself to God wholeheartedly, serving him completely, and having been tested by God through 10 trials, 10 tests. This is why some of his descendants came to inherit his spiritual bounty and thus legacy. Once the gates of this time period closed, the remainder of humanity eventually grew to become 70 primal nations. Each nation now plays in its own particular role in the larger scheme of God's purpose, while yet remaining on the level of humankind in its fallen state, meaning that they could no longer become root souls or trunk souls. Thus, while mankind may seem the same as it has always been, there's actually a profound difference between that time and now. From the beginning of Adam and Eve, up and including the time of the Tower of Babel, all of humanity existed in the age of potential root souls and was therefore dealt with accordingly, while afterwards a new era began, which was the era of only the offshoots, which constitutes and continues even of the souls that are born to this present day. Thus, all this being so, God graciously saw to it that the others could leave their root nation and join the family of Avraham if they wished to do so. God had made Avraham the father of converts. He told him that all the families of the earth will be blessed through him. That is a quote in the book of Bereshit, Pasuk Yud Bet, Pasuk Gimel, or Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. If the people of other nations do not wish to actually attach themselves to the root of the family of Abraham, then they will remain attached to their own root nation. And there is no problem with this at all. This feeling to become attached to the family of Abraham or Avraham, and thus the destiny of the children of Israel, must resonate within the aspect of the person's soul. If it is not there, then you are not destined for this. And again, that's fine. Now, just as all of Adam and Eve's descendants were originally destined for this, now just only that of Adam's and Eve's descendants were originally divided then into source trees with branches. Each subsequent tree was thus able to yield its own kind, its own branches, which could then produce its own offspring. Abraham's branches could only number 600,000, which is the number of Israelites who left Egypt, the root souls of the Jewish people that received the Torah on Mount Sinai and inherited the land of Israel, who thus comprised the essential Jewish nation. All Jewish people, children of Israel, who descended from them, are considered their branches and offspring. They're not considered the trunk, they're not considered the root souls. We are branches from that root soul of Avraham. The other nations were given one more opportunity to achieve their spiritual potential when the Torah was given to the nation of Israel, and they too were offered it. Yes, and it is known this. Had they in fact accepted the Torah, have been given the same spiritual potential as the Jewish people, but they declined it. Their fate was thus sealed, and the gate was permanently closed from that time. Now understand, still, any individual not born from the Israelites can decide still to attach themselves to the branch of Israel. He, herself, family, on to the root branch of Abraham's tree. Now, understand further that the Jewish idea is that the Torah of Moshe is the truth for all humanity, whether you're Jewish or not. The Torah, as explained in the Talmud in Sanhedrin, and that is page 58b, which is Amud Bet, it presents the 7 mitzvot, or commandments, for the non-Jewish people to observe. These 7 laws are the pillars of human civilization and are thus named the 7 laws of Noach. Since, as recorded in the Torah, all humanity is destined and descended from Noach and are supposed to follow these 7 commandments. These are not something that a person has a choice. This is actually incumbent upon all the rest of the non-Jewish world to accept and to follow. The 7 laws are, and this is the basics of them, is number 1, do not murder. Number 2, do not steal. Number 3, do not worship idols or false gods. Number 4, do not commit adultery. Number 5 is actually about cruelty to animals. Do not eat a limb removed from a live animal. Number 6, do not curse God. And number 7, set up a court system and bring offenders to justice. If you're paying carefully attention, you'll see most of these commandments are almost verbatim of the 10 commandments that God gave to Moshe, and actually God spoke to the Jewish people, where they heard the very first 2 direct, and we're talking about 2 million plus people. And the reason why this is so powerful is because humanity and moralistically, we might come upon these laws on our own and say, hey, yeah, we should keep these in order to have a moralistic society and a civilized society in order to live together, which is true. However, there's an underlying theme and principle why we're keeping these. It's not based on our own understanding. It's based on God's law. God commanded, and therefore we do it. Now, Understand this, and let's give another comparison to why this is. And a lot of people want to understand why 7. And again, the number 7 is very, very important, is for people who understand the deeper aspects of the Kabbalah. The number 7 has to do with the physical world. It has to do with nature. Therefore, it goes with the directive of God's purpose of why He established this world. You can kind of look at it like this. You take an egg, and you look at an egg. The egg is made up of different parts. Let's just break it down to their 3 basic elements. First element is the shell. Next element is the white membrane. And of course, the third element is the yolk. This actually comprises, in a sense, of all of humanity all together. The shell is that which protects. It protects the membrane. Protects the yolk, what's inside. There is much more, and the majority of the egg is the white. The white symbolizes the aspect of the world, of the population of humanity who are not Jewish. It's essential. It was created to be there. But then you have the yolk, that little part which gives you a lot of cholesterol, which becomes actually the chicken, which is the source of the baby chick. That represents the Jewish people. But surrounded by it are all of the other souls of the other nations of the world. This is how God designed life. This is how God designed humanity. We all, though, form one egg, one unified whole, one soul. We do our job, all of us together, then we're going to make our Avinu Shabbat Shamayim, our Father who is in heaven, proud, and we will enjoy the benefits that He originally destined to give us all. May we all succeed in doing it together in complete, perfect unity and peace.